Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog. Now for Tuesday, August 7th, 2012. Pretty busy tropics, I guess you'd say, for this first week of August. We have one area sitting out here, the remnants of Florence here, and almost Hurricane Ernesto approaching the central Yucatan, and it's only August the 7th. This area out here between Africa and the Lesser Antilles down here south of 20 north latitude is what is affectionately referred to as the main development region. It was not supposed to be very active this year. Turns out that is not the case. Water temperatures out here warmer than originally thought they would be, and the sea level pressure is a little bit lower than originally thought. And it's interesting because the Euro, the ECMWF climate model, was the one forecasting abnormally high pressures through this region, and that did not come to pass. So, very interesting. And we'll see how that plays for the rest of the season. As I said, it's only August the 7th, and we have all of this activity sitting out here. There's the leftovers of Florence, a little bit of a flare-up of showers and thunderstorms right near the very diffuse weak center. This is 92L, invest area 92L. It's kind of elongated, not going to do much right now, but since it's pretty vigorous and it's out there, we'll have to watch it as it tracks off to the west and reaches a more favorable environment over in this region, perhaps. And then, of course, we have Ernesto here, which we will take a closer look at satellite imagery of. Pretty good band wrapping in. We have not seen that yet, but there it is. It's wrapped up like a cinnamon roll, but you don't have that dry air look to it overall, except a little bit on the west side still. It's got to work that out, and if it does so, then this core area right here, this central dense overcast, can take over and it can strengthen into a hurricane before it makes landfall up here along the central Yucatan Peninsula. Notice some of these outer rain bands do reach up towards the resort areas of Cancun and Cozumel. That'll be the extent of it. Because this is still in the formative stage, it's not a well-established hurricane, the wind field is changeable and it remains pretty small, so most of the worst weather will be confined to about this area right here. Nonetheless, Cozumel right there and Cancun a little bit farther to the north, you know, you're going to have some rather squally weather, but this will all be in and out within the next 24 hours or so. Give it 36 and things will be back to being very much like paradise along the beaches. Again, looking at the water vapor imagery, hard to tell, but yeah, there is a little bit of dry air working in here, some more over the Yucatan as you would expect, being land and all, but you know, pretty much the structure, the outflow, very well established with Ernesto and the track of it right into the central Yucatan here, missing Belize proper in terms of the center of it. Now it's tracked just a little bit closer to the northeast tip of the Yucatan, those big resort areas. And remember, with a landfalling system in the northern hemisphere, it is that right front quadrant that usually experiences the worst weather. Let me take away that telestration and do that again. So the areas to the on the right-hand side of this up here would feel the onshore wind and the possibility of storm surge. All that's going to be up on this side of the Yucatan, whereas over here, including in Belize, the wind will be offshore. And so it's a different set of effects. If it is strengthening, I've mentioned this a few times, if it does continue to strengthen right up until landfall, the wind effects could be pretty pronounced because that convection or thunderstorm activity goes up into the wind field, and that heavy tropical rain drags those winds down pretty efficiently, and you get these extra bursts or gusts of wind that can seem more exaggerated and more amplified in an intensifying tropical cyclone. Hopefully, this will move fairly quickly. You see the 5-day position is all the way over here, not too far from the Pacific side of Mexico. There's some pretty rugged mountains in here. The terrain goes up quite a bit, so this should die out. But hopefully this will get on inland and not rain itself out over this portion of the Yucatan, creating a giant flood problem. We want it to keep moving, do its thing, and get on out of there. That'll be the best case scenario. Looking down the road a spell at the MJO, I said I was going to mention this today, the Madden-Julian Oscillation. The simplest way for me to describe it, it is a fertile period of the tropics, where you have a wet phase and a dry phase of the MJO pulse, this little wave of energy. Not little, definitely. It's a fairly large, invisible energy source of upward motion in the atmosphere. I say it's invisible. You can see its effects due to increased tropical convection, and this is tracked and modeled, as a lot of things in the atmosphere are. And this is the GFS ensemble, GEFS, and this is the ensemble group. Basically, it's a 20-member run of the GFS, with each run having slightly different variables, so that you have, in some cases, dramatically different outputs. And so instead of just looking at one model run, you look at a collection of model runs, and you try to get a consensus or an average out of that. And the green here is the GFS ensemble average, and what it shows is the MJO coming around to the Western Hemisphere and Africa over the next several days. Here's where we are now, and here's where we're heading. As the GFS and other models pick this up and start sensing this, that yes, this is coming to reality, then we're going to start seeing the models spit out more and more tropical cyclones, I do believe. And there's research from Dr. Phil Klotzbach at Colorado State University that discusses how when the MJO is over here in region 1 especially, that tropical cyclone intensity and the possibility of formation goes up. So this really helps to enhance. It's kind of like throwing a match into the bottom of a boat where there's a whole bunch of gasoline vapors that have collected from a spilled gas can or something. It just explodes. And sometimes you can get explosive development when the MJO comes around to region 1 here, like we're seeing it forecast to do as we get through and to and beyond the middle part of the month. Some of the candidates for development will certainly be watching this area, 92L. Then we have another strong tropical wave, and yet another one behind that, and then they just keep lining up here over Africa, coming across right around 10, 11 degrees of latitude, and then they hit the Atlantic. And if they do so when that MJO pulse is favorable, then we could have some pretty rapid successions of development. And if we look at the Saharan air layer, it continues to retreat to the north, for the most part. Still pretty prevalent though. However, remember, we're only at August the 7th here, 8/7. We give it another week, and we get, let's call it 8 days, and we get to the 15th. That traditional ramping up of the Cape Verde season usually doesn't happen until around August the 15th. More people than not consider that the true start of the hurricane season, at least out here in the deep tropics. And these waves will be coming across, and they have a really good chance to develop. So there you go. That's your outlook for today. At least nothing impacting the United States, and hopefully Ernesto won't be too much of a problem for Central America and that area between Cancun and Belize City being the target zone for landfall. And again, if you do have plans to travel down to that part of the Yucatan, give it about a day and a half and things will improve. This is not a major hurricane coming in. Ernesto has struggled all along. There's no reason to think that it'll change course and rapidly intensify into a major hurricane. Hopefully that won't be the case. You never say never, but the indications are that the status quo will hold true, and Ernesto will come in at the most, hopefully only, a Category 1 hurricane, although that does have its own set of problems and needs to be taken seriously. Alright, again, I'm Mark Sudduth. HurricaneTrack.com is my website. Check it out if you haven't. I'm sure hopefully most of you have by now. Always glad to do these videos for Hurricane and Hurricane HD, and I'll have another one for you tomorrow.